Hello, and welcome to the Focusing Way podcast, available on iTunes and Stitcher. I'm your host, David Battistella. I often speak about putting focusing to the test. Does it work? To me, a test means stressing something to the point where you understand its failure or breaking point. I've put focusing to this test in my own life, always looking for situations where it does not apply or cannot help. Today on the Focusing Way podcast, we're going to hear about one of those ultimate tests. Dr. Mohammed Al-Tawil is a PhD in mental health. He has a PhD in clinical psychology. He's a chartered psychologist, a complex trauma psychotherapist, a family psychotherapist, a CBT practitioner, a focusing-oriented psychotherapist, and a clinical psychologist. And he's the founder of the Palestine Trauma Center. I've just read you a long list of accomplishments. What makes it more amazing is that Mohammed Al-Tawil is Palestinian. He was born and raised in a refugee camp in the Gaza Strip. As a boy, he threw stones, suffered beatings that left him permanently disabled, and has spent time in prison. Over the past 5 years, he's been training and focusing with adults with Jerry Conway, a focusing trainer and the UK coordinator of the Focusing in Gaza project. He's also been training and focusing with children and families with Simon Kilner. He's been a registered focusing trainer since 2014. In this powerful conversation, he shares with us his pathway out of Gaza, but also his powerful passion to help his people, and he's using his education and focusing as primary tools to help the people back in Gaza who are still suffering the trauma of living in an occupied state. And joining me now is Mohammed Al-Tawil. Thank you for being here with me today.
It's my pleasure.
Just to begin, I wondered if you could share a bit about yourself and your birthplace in Palestine.
Yeah, I was born in Palestine and some area called Gaza Strip, and so I'm from Gaza. I was born in a refugee camp called Al-Nusayrat. It's one of the 8 refugee camps in Gaza. It's located in the middle of Gaza Strip.
Mm-hmm.
So that's this where I come from.
I was just wondering, could you describe your life for you and your family and your neighbors while you were growing up in the refugee camp?
Yeah, I grow up in a refugee camp. I come from big family. It's I'm 9. I have 8 brothers, so including me, we are 9 brothers, 4 sisters, 1 mother, 1 father, and I just opened my eyes in the refugee camp. And I found myself as a 4th generation for the Palestinian, living in a very challenging place. Is rarely to have a green area or play area as a child to play there. Going quite often to the school without the pocket money. The life was very hard as a child, and asking my father and my mom why we are as a refugee here.
Mm-hmm.
And always we listen the story from my mother side and my father, how they've been exiled and uprooted from their original village, and which is in Al Maghar. It's now nearby capital of what they call Israel. So that's asking my parents why we are here refugee, and they telling us the story how the Israeli occupying forces kicked and forced Palestinian, which is my parents, part of them, to live in different places. Some of these refugees came to Gaza, some of them in West Bank, some of them in Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and other parts of the world. Maybe some of them in Italy also.
Yes.
So we grow up in this condition, and you can imagine how it's difficult for a child to grow up. And our neighbors and my friends, when I was 15, I had lots of challenge in my life. So I was not keen to see the soldiers humiliated my brothers, older brothers, and my neighbors or my relatives, and he kick them and humiliate them and stop them even from getting medical services. All these things make me angry when I was a child,
Yes.
about 15 years old, and go to the schools. And at that time, I was just as a teenager, and I was doing very well actually at the school, but I felt I need to fight these soldiers, but I have nothing to fight them to bring the freedom and justice and dignity to my people. So I just only found the stone to throw stones against the soldiers. So I was injured, and now I'm have problem now. I'm in my legs now. I can't walk properly. And I went to the prison for about 6 months, and I lost quite a few number of my close friends. So some of them I saw them died in front of my eyes.
Yes.
So it was very hard time. So then I decided just keep throwing stones against the soldiers. I didn't find it. It's useful and powerful. So then I changed my mind later on, and I used the education. So I just put all my energy on the education to learn and to get more information as much as I can to beat or to try to defeat the occupation and the oppression against myself, my family, and my people in Palestine. So I keep doing and studying more and more. So I was one of the top students in Gaza Strip. I got quite a few numbers of scholarship. I got to the United Nations Institute in West Bank. I learned there to be as a teacher, and then I was a teacher also because I was doing well and teaching the students in Gaza. I was doing good as a teaching, but then I found most of the children suffering as I suffered myself when I was a child because of the trauma and the hard situation they are living. Then I said, I must change this job to find something more I can help these children, unfortunate children and traumatized children. So then I changed to be as a psychologist. So I did my master degree and PhD in Cairo in Egypt. And after that, I've been successfully got a scholarship from Ford Foundation from New York.
Yes.
And then I came to the UK to study, and I did another PhD doctorate about the traumatized children here, and I work at the university, and I have a clinic now working with the traumatized children and families.
Yes.
Here in the UK. And still, I established Palestine Trauma Center as a charity in 2007 in Gaza. And also I established another arm for this charity in the UK in 2010. So at the moment, this charity helped more than 100,000 children who are traumatized.
I'm just wondering if just for a moment we could go back and if you could describe for me more that time when you were young and angry and in prison, and what that was like for you.
It's very hard when I'm telling this. I just found, I come like tears in my eyes to even to sense to go to that moment as a little child being brutally kicked and injured and bleeding, and the soldiers even carried on beating me while I'm bleeding.
You mentioned that left you with some problems. Was that as a result of the beating you received?
As an injury, and another health issues was developed and caused me now huge problems in walking. So now I'm walking in with the aids, with the stick, and sometimes I can't walk at all.
Could you share with me what were some of the first moments that led you? You mentioned that you would pick up stones and throw stones in your anger, but could you share with me what were some of the first moments that set you on the path from being a refugee to being a PhD?
Yeah, it's about the shift between like a little fighter, fighter for freedom when I was child, throwing the stones. I was like, it was for me as a form of therapy. If I'm sitting at home, even my parents, they never beat me, or all the time one of the most respected in the family. But yeah, one time I can remember my father just tried to locked me in the room and say, no, you can't go out. I don't want to lose you. But for me, I found I can't see this other friends and neighbors in the refugee camp keep under huge pressure and humiliated. They are feeling like we are not a human. We are left as being treated as insects in that refugee camp. So I feel like I have to do some things. I can't be useless. I want to do some things, even it's not that useful in terms of affecting the soldiers. The stone, it's just make a noise because they have armed cars. But for me, it's form of therapy at that time to see, just to throw the stones. I was feeling I'm doing something, even very little. And keeping doing this, and then after I injured and I was released from the Israeli prison, I thought I must find another way of fighting these occupation and these injustice. And then I said, why? I've just found myself doing good in the education, and then I decided to use one of the most powerful, which can it's an attempt to bring more justice and make the people outside Palestine aware about this situation and how much they need the freedom and the dignity after their country being stolen and they've been kicked and forced to live in a very like alleys and small houses. So that was the feeling to make me shift to see, okay, stones. I can't even blame my children or myself. Feel like that was really a game of death. It wasn't like safe to throw stones, as my friends, they lost their life.
Yes.
Of throwing stones against the soldiers. But then I said, I just tried to take it from how much powerful I need another one. I didn't feel as a child, I just want to release my huge anger and burning anger. I just say, okay, I just decide to try the education, and that's why I get lots of qualifications, work more in computer, in journalist. I work as a journalist also sometimes, and then I focus on a clinical psychologist, developing some intervention for children and families, and set up a Palestine Trauma Center in Gaza for the refugee Palestinian children and their families, and here in the UK to support that charity in Gaza. So I feel at the moment I'm on the right path. That I put my energy and on the education to fight the injustice and to bring the freedom and dignity to my people in Palestine.
Can you tell me a little bit about what drove you to want to study psychology?
As I maybe mentioned this briefly, I was just very good. I feel happy and proud to be as a teacher and work and help these children, unfortunate children. But the classroom was like overcrowded, 60, 65 students, and the condition in the schools, it's a huge challenge. And then I found some of these children in the school while I was teaching, they can't pay attention. They very easily distracted, and they have noticed trauma and difficulties. So if even if I was a good teacher, I don't have that tools to help these children to release and their trauma as children were born in a refugee camp and they're still ongoing. You know, the problem in about these children and myself as it's a cross generation, and about 70 years it's still ongoing right now.
Yeah.
These we're still facing. Now Gaza, for example, 10 years now under the siege.
Yeah.
You can't find a place on the earth like Gaza. So it's a huge trouble and it's ongoing. So people, they don't know next day they will be alive or died. Even my relatives, when I spoke to them, they said sometimes, especially in the clashes or war, recent war in Gaza last year, they go to make, and for Muslims, sometimes they make wudu, just they clean themselves because they might be died over the night. So it's very difficult. So that's why I turn up to be a psychologist, and I put huge energy in myself to learn to be as a psychologist. I did my degree, master, and doctorate, but I didn't find it's enough. I need more tools, more skills, and then I apply for a Ford Foundation to be as a clinical psychologist. And then I came to the UK to get more information, more skills, more training, which I have at the moment. So that's really helped me to set up a proper, even a small center in Gaza. But people, they can go, children, they can reach this center. It's outreach, it's in the street. So we have a very good intervention programs. So that's, I feel at the moment, I did at least some things to help these children. I can come to the UK and I have my family and the 3 children here and forget about all this suffering. But it's not me. I can't live and carry on my life and still look back and remember my childhood time. So these unfortunate children, they need someone, or they need people, whether Palestinian or others, to not forget them, to remember them, and to try to help them as much as we can. So that's why I'm working all today, all this Sunday, it's for them. So try to help them and bring some of my colleagues, support them, give them supervision, and etc.
When did you add focusing to your psychotherapy?
This focusing, it's a start. There's a film, it's already on YouTube about the journey of focusing for people in Gaza. And how I started this, it was really a journey. We established Palestine Trauma Center, as I mentioned, 2007 in Gaza, 2010 in the UK. Before we established the BTC Palestine Trauma Center in the UK in 2009, one friend from Ireland, his name Richard from Galway.
Yes.
I thank him so much. He came to visit me because he invited me before, and I went to Galway and Dublin quite a few times and gave a presentation. But then he came and visited me at the university in 2009 with another friends. His name Harbert. I think
Yes.
he's from America or from the United States. And they came to the university and they said Muhammad, and I took them to my family. I introduced my family. We had a Palestinian food together, and we discussed this issue. They said, Muhammad, how we can help you and support you in this. We know who you are doing, and you have a charity in Gaza about looking after and caring for the children. How we can support you? I told them, if you can support and give us fund to some project, will be good. And they said, we don't have fund at the moment, but we have a very successful experience about focusing. And it's called a community wellness focusing project. And they tried this in Afghanistan. And they told me it was good experience and it's helped people. It's like community based approach. I said, oh, that will be excellent if myself learn that approach, and then I can pass it to my colleagues in Gaza. So that's the point, the starting point of the Gaza focusing journey.
So the people in Gaza are learning focusing techniques as they do community outreach to deal with people who have experienced deeply traumatic circumstances. Can you share, without breaking any privacy, some of the kinds of stories the trauma center hears on a daily basis?
Actually, we have three main projects in Palestine Trauma Center. We have family therapy. It's a therapeutic approach. We have in this approach we have psychiatrists and we have psychologists and social worker and animators. Also, we have Friday of Joy. It's outreach. It's in the street. It's a play with the children. It's every Friday. And also we have the focusing as a psychosocial support. This was the question. I just want to give you the story about the focusing and how we use it in Gaza.
Okay.
Since I've been here in lots of conferences, international, go to Italy, to America, to different places, ask always the experts in trauma. If the whole community is traumatized, how we can help them? And all the time I've been thinking about the best way we could help the community when they are most of them traumatized, children and their parents. To be the fact in Gaza, we have not more than 10 psychologists or clinical psychologists or psychiatrists are professional and qualified. About 10, 20 maximum if they are increasing. And then if we have 2 million in Gaza, for example, we need an army of psychologists to help the whole community. So then we try to see it's very important to have some things like focusing, easy to be learned. So focusing, for example, doesn't need the person to learn focusing and to practice focusing, doesn't need to be a psychologist. Anyone, parents, school teacher, driver, farmer, fishermen, they can learn focusing easily. They don't need background in psychology or social care. So it's easy to spread. It's easy to learn. It's very gentle. It's very good for humanities, like about the feeling. The focusing, from our experience, it's very gentle. It can come and without judgment, without taking a side. It's the person come to you to listen to you, to support you, and it's a client center. So it's a driving way with the client, with the people, without like upsetting them or abusing them in any way. So you respect them, you listen to them, you are there to support them in any way. Just listening to them, it's a huge success for the focusing in Gaza. So that's the flavor of focusing we experience in Gaza. And some of these people, they said, I never been through my difficult feeling about 30, 40 years. This time with focusing, I'm close. I can talk about my hardship, my difficulties, which is in my daily life. I can't talk about, I can't get touch with this feeling, which is nice, happy feeling or difficult or strong feelings. And if you come to statistic, I'm writing an article. We have two ways of assessment. So we have a pre-assessment and we have post-assessment. So for me, because I'm a psychologist, always I need to make sure we have really quality of this focusing approach. So what we did, we designed a assessment tool, which is part of my doctorate here in the UK. It's about trauma, about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorders assessment. Yes. So we developed this more, and it's a validated assessment. We did the pre-assessment before we are using the focusing. The focusing in Gaza been developed to be related to their cultural, to their how they believe. So it's very related and very match with the needs of people and their cultural and their belief. So we have 12 sessions being developed here with my colleagues Jerry Conway and Mary and Renee from Netherlands and Simon Kilber. So these people helped me a lot to develop this, and they train me, and then I train people here speaking Arabic in the UK, and then we deliver this. We went to Gaza and we trained the people there. So this is the core group, and then this core group went out, work with families, work with the group of people, women and from both gender, from the refugee camps, and we just make sure we try to get the impact of this approach through their feedback, case studies, and statistical assessment. So we have PTSD scale to check these people before we start the focusing, how they feel, whether they have PTSD or not.
Yes.
And after 3 months, we have this focusing approach. After conduct this and deliver it to them and teach them the focusing skills and activities, we check them again. So we did a post-assessment after 3 months.
Yes.
And we found incredible result. It's very successful, and it's one of the most successful approach. Even it's very close to family therapy as a therapeutic, helping the people and reducing significantly the number of traumatized people. I say maybe that will improve their feeling, but really it's helped not just improving their feeling or improving their functioning, how to deal with the trauma and how to be good, productive, positive with themselves and with others. It's more than that. It's improving and reducing the number of PTSD, the number of psychological problems. So was very successful experience, really, for using the focusing as a community base.
You've been listening to a conversation with Mohammed Al-Tawil. Please stay tuned for part 2 of our conversation in our next episode. You've been listening to the Focusing Way podcast, available on iTunes and Stitcher. Also, please check out our website at thefocusingway.com.